We are on the verge, Jeff, of incredible stuff. Not just the Tesla world. June, the middle of June comes to mind with something that we've got planned. But the country, but probably top of mind right now is what happened last night with AI. Not last night, it was 2 nights ago now, huh?
Yeah.
With Grok. But I'm going to use that because I want to drive something home tonight. I want to take this time to really talk about something that is right up your and my alley, that you talk about all the time, that Elon talks about all the time. I have a new phone and everything is cattywampus.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Elon talks about it all the time. You and I talk about it all the time. I still don't think it's getting through to people, but the Grok thing just brought it home again, and I thought it'd be a perfect time to talk about this again. And that is the reality that the factory or that the manufacturing is the key. You can have great products, but you don't know how to manufacture them. You could have a good product that's doing well, but you don't know how to ramp. You could have a great product, but you can't make it for the lowest price or can't compete by price. You could make it a great product, but you could be making it in the wrong place compared to where you need to be making it because of war or because of tariffs or for a whole list of reasons. But Elon has shown it over and over again is that he's just such a genius at this factory part. And so I wanted to use the Grok thing to talk about that. Um, Elon talked about how he not only put up that factory in this record time that Jensen and everybody else has talked about in terms of putting that cluster together in record time, but there was more to it than just the cluster. Talk to me about the factory that went around the cluster.
Well, yeah, and it's all the facilitization, the cooling, the heating, all the the liquid cooling, all the power that goes in. So this is all the work that you do when you're planning a site, and then inside of the site, it's got, I mean, highly precise, very strict requirements above and beyond any typical factory. These AI factories, we call them, are of a level of complexity that's really above and beyond. Because I mean, it's these two worlds colliding. Of you have a typical, your classic factory building large or medium-sized goods or even smaller goods, but then you have these data centers that were these CPU-based data centers, and yep, they needed cooling, and yep, they needed all kinds of power requirements. But now, when you have these AI data centers, it's got very unique. It's not only high power requirements, but it's very unique. It's not only that it has cooling requirements; it's got very unique cooling requirements, so you can get the kind of performance because everything is all blended together. And this goes with typical factory design and layout as well. If you don't lay it out the right way, you're not going to get the process times and efficiencies you're looking for, and then you're not going to get potentially not get the utilization you need. And all of those triggers, they translate to the AI factory as well. You want high utilization. If you can't run the GPUs at the temperatures that are required, and you've got to underclock them, and then all of a sudden now you're not going to get the utilization. You're not going to get the output and the performance you want. So, yeah, all these factors come together, but the fact that they brought the first one up, I think, on 122 days, and then the second 100K came up in, I think, 92 days. I mean, that's a 25% plus improvement or so in just one iteration. And so now, what are they going to go from 200 to 500? I mean, the question is, where are they at on this improvement curve? Obviously, it's not going to go to 0 days, but they're way, way, way ahead of others. And it's not only that they're getting the AI factory up, but they're getting the very high utilization, and they're getting a lot of coherence across, usage across all these, the full cluster. So it's a very special situation where it's almost like the Elon effect from building gigafactories, or the Elon effect from designing and productizing vehicles that hit the feature value trade-off so you can be profitable in EV, or the Elon effect of low cost space travel has now translated into the AI world, where he can build this AI factory faster with higher utilization and at a lower price point than others, which means that Jensen Huang is going to allocate more product to him. By the way, he's probably now buying more product potentially than others when you combine his two entities. I mean, that's arguable, but even if he isn't, the fact that his utilization rates are up that high, it's the same thing in goods world. That means his consumption is high. That means his turns are high in inventory, which means he's gonna go order more GPUs faster than the others. So somebody else may have ordered more, but if their utilization rates aren't high, they may not have enough cash to actually reorder the next round, or they're too slow in building the site out and they have all these restrictions. I just don't see some of the other CEOs that are buying these GPUs. I don't see them, in a ripped up t-shirt walking through the data center trying to solve problems.
And we have to, and again, he talked about it so briefly, but for you and I'm sure we're going, been there, done that. I mean, he's talking about finding the factory. First of all, this is not an easy situation. Finding, the right location, the right square footage, the right layout of the building,
Yeah,
the right slab under the building, the right I even had a situation one time where I needed a better sprinkler system, and the building wouldn't hold it. The rafters weren't strong enough to
yeah,
hold that larger sprinkler system. I mean, he was running into those kind of problems as he's trying to outfit this factory, and
yeah,
yet his team and him are figuring these things out and still delivering this complex building in
yeah.
this record amount
It's
of
a flywheel. It's a flywheel because once you have that kind of performance, like I said, he's going to be getting GPUs faster. Uh, and so he's going to have allocation, but then he's also going to have allocation of talent because everybody wants to be up at that table with Elon giving the XAI speech of like, hey, we just built the best thing out there. And the only way you can build the best thing out there is if you have a CEO like him that is unblocking all of those issues and then from end to end, whether it's money, whether it's bringing the GPU cluster up, whether it's, I mean, you name it. And it's also just critical, senior leadership direction of like, what are the right things to work on? Like, what's really going to drive value for consumers? So it's so hard to have a very high hit rate across all of those things. It's almost like the rolled yield of putting a product through a factory. It's almost like, the probability of all these things happening is usually pretty rare. So again, I think it's the correlation of, you know, Elon the car builder, Elon the rocket ship builder. Now it's Elon the AI factory builder, and then again the same talent pool, kind of like the best people that are doing this stuff want to go work for him because if you're doing all those other things well, you have a really high propensity A to work on really cool stuff and B to make a lot of money.
right. Yeah, probably in that order. So then we have, for
Yeah.
most people like that. So then we have, let's just now shift our attention because there's been all this conversation on X, and I've already done two programs on it, but I wanted you to weigh in on it as well. If you take exactly what we've just been talking about and you take this matter of robotaxi, and I'm not, and you know, I'm not even concerned about part of the argument that's talking about whether other people besides Tesla will have a good enough system to put it out as a
Yeah.
robotaxi. Let's just assume that other people do
Yeah.
within the same time period, they're able to compete. Can you imagine, knowing what you know about building factories, building product, putting stuff out, can you imagine anybody else catching Tesla in terms of a ramp of vehicles ever?
Yeah. No, this is where, I mean, first off, you have to be open-minded and you have to think through the bear case and you have to understand it and be able to articulate it. But I think what's happening between bears and bulls on this topic is they're literally just two, they're like, they're two ships passing, by each other at night and they're not really seeing each other. And because there's valid points on both sides, but I think the bulls are right. In fact, I'm very confident the bulls are right because it's not a question of are there going to be other people participating, as you said. It's more of a question of margin share and market share. And the whole concept in rideshare and robo-taxi is going to be around utilization. And that's what drives the rates. That's what gives you your $135 Uber ride to go 5 miles or whatever the number you see these surge pricing. This is what ultimately articulates some of the pricing. And there's even some stats that came out this morning that year over year, the average Uber is up another 8% in
Right.
terms of the average ride. So their 8% is well above, the nominal inflation target. So we're, in this critical area of transportation, it's running well ahead of, the inflation targets, and it doesn't seem like it's stopping. And for all these proliferations of everybody's going to do it, and the Ubers of the world are going to be the aggregator of everybody, well, they've made deals with BYD, Cruise, Waymo. They've made deals with all these people all over the world, but their rates keep going up. So what gives? So my answer would be is you need a better mousetrap, and the better mousetrap is the 8 million vehicle fleet that Tesla has. The better mousetrap is the vertically integrated cost structure, where from the base layer of silicon to the process of cleaning the vehicles out is all owned by one company. And that one company isn't paying a margin out to anybody to do anything, except some, small suppliers for some parts here or there. But they're not outsourcing cleaning. They're not outsourcing fleet management. They're not outsourcing the app. They're not outsourcing the ride aggregator, the Uber. They're not outsourcing any. And then of course they're not outsourcing the production of the vehicle. They're not outsourcing the production of the AI solution. They're not outsourcing the software in the AI solution. As soon as your title becomes aggregator, I think red lights should start going off. And the reason red lights should start going off is if there's no competition, you may be okay. Because if there's no competition and people have a choice, they're going to go call an Uber.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. All of a sudden, if you have competition, this is why I always bring up it's not just do they have some robo taxis out there? It's like, what's the business model? And is the business model profitable? And what's the time to break even on the business model? What's the time to profitability on the business model? For giving this many billions of rides, and I look at, I look at, the revenue and gross margins, it's not a great story yet on some of these other companies. So yeah, my answer to that is it's bulls and bears mostly talking past each other. I think the bulls are right. I think there are, there's serious bear case concerns. I mean, you've got to get through, you have to get through these edge cases on unsupervised robo taxi, because all of a sudden, if it turns into uh, what do you call it? Kind of a mapped out, only these road solutions. Well, now you're in the Red Sea. You're swimming in the Red Sea, Blue Sea thing of like, do I want to be, if I'm in the Red Sea, it's fish eating, each other and bigger fish eating, and if you want to be in the Blue Sea where you're just kind of like going along and doing what you want. And I think Tesla would be in a bit of the Red Sea if it's just, certain streets, big cities. Now you're competing against all these HD mapped robo taxis. But all of a sudden, if it is this ubiquitous, you drop it anywhere in the world, it works, which I think they're on a path to. I really do. I mean, the data says it. The data says they're on a track to do that. Well, then the economics get crazy.
Yeah, and then taking that, what about the other side, which is the factory side? If we have a level playing field, let's just think that it's a level playing field. It's not going to be level in terms of cost, which is another issue I think you should address, but it's going to be level, let's say it's level in terms of regulation. So let's just say Waymo and whoever else has the same opportunity to go into St. Louis or Memphis or Texas or wherever. They have the same ability. Regulations are solved, but one company is vertically integrated, as you're mentioning, but not only vertically integrated, but has capacity. to be able to throw at it. I mean,
Yeah.
how does any other company, is there a way that you could imagine another company getting close to coming up with the capacity?
Um, no, it'd be difficult. So you would need a company that first off, there aren't auto companies. Here's one like answer right now. There's actually only one true global auto company that I can think of. I mean, well, let's just say vibrant and like all the Western European and all the American companies have folded up shop in China, basically, or
Right.
they're on their last legs. Are there BMWs and Fords driving around China? Sure. But in terms of having a vibrant new car business where they can go in and sell new product, like they're lost. So I think you're in the situation right now where Tesla has the existing fleet that's depreciated in value, so it's lower cost capital that's out there. It's owner owned capital, and then now they're working on building a vehicle even at a lower price point. So the gap becomes greater and greater. If somebody is running a robo taxi service in the United States, the first question you have to ask yourself is, can they build a vehicle in the United States? Or are they going to be importing? And guess what's happening right now? Anything that's coming in that's going to have the word automobile in it is going to get a tariff.
Right.
And the bar is going to be pretty high unless you figure out a way to do production in the United States. And the bar may even be high even if you do figure out how to do production in the United States. So so yeah, I think can you say never? No, but there's a pretty sizable lead. It's kind of like the data lead. There's a very, all data isn't created equal, but man,
Right.
Tesla has a lot of data. So if it's not all created equal, they can certainly partition what is useful. And they still have, if it's useful plus non-useful, they still have more than anybody else, even if it's only using the useful data. So I think what you're going to see, here's what I think the viewer should take away.
Okay.
And I posted a little bit about this. I think you're going to see a similar trend in media and from companies, just like we saw with EVs from 2015 to 2024, which is number one, the competition is coming. Number two, look at this PowerPoint slide. Number three, look at this wood or clay model that we spray painted in the shop. It's a robo taxi. Number four, here's our robo taxi with 14 different partnerships that we're launching, which the economic model will never work. These are the things you're going to see, but they're going to get the media attention. They're going to get the chyron. It's going to be called Tesla Robotaxi Killer. And we may see another 5+ years of this happening, just like we saw it from 2015 to 2024. And all I would ask the users is to pass it through two filters in your mind. And the one filter is, do they have the scale? Number two is, do they have the business model? It's actually three filters: the technology, the scale, and the business model. And if they don't, well, I mean, can they be an entrant? Sure.
Mhm.
But now we're talking about, and this is where I think the two ships pass each other in the night. What one ship is saying, well, there's going to be other people out there. Like that's the bears. That's fine. The question is margin share and market share. Because the iPhone right now has tremendous margin share out there. They don't need to sell there's 1.2 billion phones sold a year. They don't need to sell all of them. But the fact that they sell 230 million of them gives them the volume scale that they need. And the fact that they're selling them at 42% gross margin when everybody else is between 10 and 25, they have the margin share as well. And that's just on the hardware. They have they have 70% plus margins on the services and a wider array of services that no one else has. So I think people should just expect to be fudded endlessly, and there'll be Tesla killers, robotaxi killers, but they won't be able to pass through the three filters I've told you. I don't believe so, but there will be other people out there.
So you brought up a really interesting point that I had actually thought a little bit about this morning also, which is you said, okay, we've always got the Tesla killer coming with regard to the car, and yet there, except for BYD,
It
and
never came.
and maybe another couple of Chinese guys looking pretty good, but they're in early days. But
Well, they never, yeah.
as far as the American makers, the U.S. makers, and the European makers,
Yeah.
none, not
Yeah.
one. single successful BEV yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And now China showed up to the dance.
Yeah.
But it's debatable, and there's still people that want to debate. And please, you're welcome to debate me. Come up on a space on X. Somebody show me a a a validated balance sheet that one of these automakers, pure EV on their pure EV product line, that they're profitable. Because BYD ships millions of gas and hybrid vehicles, mostly hybrid now. They've gotten rid of a lot of their gas vehicles.
Buses,
Yes,
and
buses, all kinds of. They have 40 models of just EV alone. And by the way, 40 models of EV at similar volumes of Tesla. Now tell me how that's going to be profitable when Tesla's 5 models producing similar that what BYD has 40. I'll wait and hear that math. This is
right.
why we don't see pure EV broken out, by the way. Li Auto, people confuse Li Auto like they've been this EV maker forever. The answer is no. They shipped their first pure EV last year. They just started in pure EV. They're ramping up. I think they're going to be formidable. My former colleague actually is one of the co-founders of Li Auto, and I do have great respect for them. But they've been mostly this gas electric hybrid business, and they make very nice hybrid vehicles. But anyway, so they've showed up, right? They've showed up to the, but there's no one, when I say killer, I mean like they have the scale, they're profitable, and they're global, and they make stuff that people want. The Chinese are not global. It's debatable whether they're making, I mean, they don't compete with Tesla above $30,000. Let's be clear. They're getting their volume below 30,000. Now, will that be in perpetuity? No, I'm sure they may make a more competitive vehicle above 30,000. But the point is that 2015 to 2024, the Tesla killer is coming. Nobody is here today with the level of profitability and global scale and tech that Tesla has. Nobody.
Nobody. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So now let's just take it one step further. My favorite subject, probably way at the top of your list too, is the Optimus. And we have the Bears saying, well, there's 100+ companies now that are all making, and man, some of the videos are pretty cool. Figures,
Use the
stuff,
filter.
so what happens though if we've got 10, 20 of these companies that all make a good, usable product that can go into a factory? I've said for years, I was making pretty good money with a $5 million company. So if I had a $5 million robot company, I'm sure I'd be making enough money to take care of my family.
Mhm.
So it's okay if you actually are successful and can sell $5 million worth of humanoid robots, as long as that
Yeah.
covers your other costs. Maybe you have to do 25 million in the robot business. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know what the number is. But in terms of getting to scale, are you picturing in your mind that anybody will have the remotest chance against Elon Musk in terms of actually building millions and millions and millions of these?
Well, sure. I mean, like I said, if you apply the EV example, BYD is making millions of EVs. So, but then now you have to apply the filter. And the filter is it the right technology? Is there global scale? And is the business model work? And all of a sudden, it's not clear yet that there's a business model that works on the other side of an EV. But with Tesla, they have you have to run it through. It's pretty much the same filter. It's the AI brain and the manufacturing capability.
Right.
And when you break apart the AI brain, you have to think of the hardware, the silicon, the AI computer that'll be in the chest of the vehicle. You have to think of the optics, and you have to think of the software running on that. And Tesla has this huge head start of applying this framework and this training, all the way from training all the way to perception and inference at the device side. They have this huge head start with the vehicle that they're going to be able to apply those principles to the bot. So everybody else that's making a bot is going to be buying a chip from NVIDIA, and they're going to be buying the operating system code on CUDA from NVIDIA, They're going to be buying other things potentially from other suppliers. The point is they're going to have to pay somebody 50, 60, 70 points of gross margin. That's the going rate right now for AI hardware. And Tesla's not. Tesla, obviously, they're not fabricating the chip. They're not physically manufacturing and packaging the chip. That's a TSMC or a Samsung in this case. So someone else will do that and they'll make a margin on that. There's no question about it. But in the case of the other folks, TSMC or Samsung are making the chip, and then NVIDIA is selling from those factories to these people as NVIDIA being the supplier, and NVIDIA is getting their margin, again, both on the chip and on the software side, and Tesla doesn't have to do that. And of course, Tesla is still working on their Dojo solution in the background. So Tesla has upside on their cost model. It's not clear to me what the others have yet. So I would simplify the bot story is you're going to see a lot of them. And can the Chinese make a lot of volume? Sure. The question is, what's the capability of that bot? How many degrees of freedom does the hand have? Can it do the small, precise manufacturing that looks like Tesla's going for? Because then all bots aren't created equal. Now you got to put it through that filter. And then that's the technology filter. And then you have to go to the scale filter, and then you got to go to the business model filter. And I think as soon as you realize that there's one company truly vertically integrated that has the AI brain and has the global scale, it becomes clear. Again, I want to let the listeners know I do not think that there will be only one company making bots, but this will be a question of margin share and market share. And Tesla will be a very healthy, if not majority participant. They are going to be one of the names, in this, and they may end up licensing. There's so many different business models that can come out of this.
Sure there are. All right, let's switch off of Tesla and manufacturing for a minute and talk about the general economy and the guy presiding over it. Well, the guys actually, because this is it's the Elon and Donald show. So they participated last night with Hannity, and then today they were giving Trump was giving a speech, but Elon was there in front of this international fund
Business meeting, yeah.
business meeting. And but I was struck this morning by the Fed's minutes and by Leachman at CNBC, Steve
Leisman.
Leachman, yeah, Steve, by his analysis, and he said the markets might be on hold for a while. That everything now has been kind of thrown out there. I think we pretty well see the lay of the land. We know what Trump wants, and he keeps repeating it over and over again in these different forums, which is good. That's what I've talked about forever. That's why I like how Elon does it too. Great communicator of his vision. But a lot of it hasn't landed yet to where we know what it's going to do. We don't know what DOGE is going to do. We don't know how the tariffs are going to work out. We don't know whether the omnibus bill is going to pass in its current fashion or whether it'll be jerked around to the point where it's not going to do what we needed to do. We don't know if the Republicans are going to backfill the DOGE commission on some of the things that they need kind of a greater legal statement behind them. So the markets might kind of pause while they wait to see how some of these land. Does that hit you the way it hits me, or what do you think?
I mean, it's certainly one of the possible outcomes. I mean, I'm never, I'm not one of these, I'll tell you, we're going to, 7,000 in 2 months or something, or we're having some huge correction coming. I'm not the one to necessarily do that. But on the fundamentals, I did want to hit the omnibus bill. And I think as it relates to people that are interested in EVs and battery storage, I think they should understand that there is cultural pressure to put some water out, in the flames of spending on all this, call it clean energy. The Republicans call it green new scam. It's the IRA. All I will tell to the viewers is there was a letter written from Congress back in August to the Speaker, and there were 14 Republicans have a 1 or 2 seat majority in Congress after all the Trump appointees go into the government. I think it's about a 2-seat majority that Republicans have in Congress. It's a very slim majority. So it's not like President Trump has this mandate of, I've got the Senate, I've got the Congress. All he needs is one or two people to flip and nothing goes through. So on this IRA, there are 14 red district, red state congressmen and women that were signed on to a letter that says, "Hey, we built we built factories in our districts and we like this thing. We need this thing. We're employing thousands of people. And to spend that capital and to raise these factories and to get all this stuff going and hire all these people and then pull the rug out is not a good thing." So there are 14 people on the R side that made it through the November. This was the August
Yeah,
letter.
yeah, yeah.
Of those, we went through and did the math. A lot of the people on the EOS that are following the EOS company did a lot of great homework on this. I looked at it with a couple of them, and there's 14 people that made it through. So anyway, so you should keep that in mind, because I think what's going to happen with the omnibus bill is you may have a repeal of the IRA, but it would be kind of a repeal and replace, and all in one snap, where it's repeal the IRA. You may lose the $7,500 credit, you may lose some things, but then it may also be replaced with a Made in United States credit on the manufacturing side and maybe on the consumer side, but definitely I think on the battery manufacturing side. So that's one piece of it. The other thing is, I think the Fed's going to have a cheat sheet. They're going to be in an interesting position here because President Trump and Elon are doing with Doge is they're running a tally. They're literally, telling these groups of, like, we're laying off all these people. Boom, boom, boom. There's a big number growing. There's a budget dollar saved, but there's also a headcount number, and it's growing. And all of a sudden, the Fed's going to have this cheat sheet. And the reason it's going to be a cheat sheet is because these people aren't necessarily, I don't think they can run for unemployment yet, because they're going to get an 8-month severance.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a negative hit on the consumption side of the economy, but they're going to know that there may be hundreds of thousands of people out of work. And so they can start factoring into this other side of their mandate, which is employment. So they'll have the time to see the data, but they don't necessarily have to react on a dime. But I think we're one or two job reports away from something cracking, but we'll see. So yeah, they have to maintain both sides of the mandate. And again, if you go back and look at inflation, it's mostly this long lag with housing, and it was eggs, bird flu eggs, and like car insurance or something. It wasn't like it was this white, like everything else was like below 2%, or most of the stuff was below 2%. So I don't think there's a widespread problem like we were when we were up at 9%.
Oh, no, 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 not at all. Yeah. So I was thinking kind of in terms of the bond market, which is, I consider it to be central, and like the All In podcast guys consider it to be central. And I mean, I can't tell you how many people right now that I follow and trust are like really recognizing that right now it's all about the treasuries coming down, as opposed to the Fed. The Fed could come down another 100 basis points, but if the treasuries don't come down, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so the treasuries have been resisting. They haven't been coming down. And that's kind of what I'm focused on here, is that the market can't really start moving up strongly until those bonds do come down.
Yeah, they need to come down a bit.
Yeah. And so the bond buyers, which some people think are the smartest buyers, some people believe that all the brain, it's kind of like baseball, right? The baseball kids were all the smart guys. And it's the bond guys are supposed to be all the smart guys. Anyway, but the bond guys really don't trust it yet. They're not ready to acknowledge, or be fully in on the fact that we're going to get these cuts, because at the end of the day, inflation really is about the government spending.
Well, yeah, and they have, they're noting these risks of, tariffs. They're noting noting the tax cuts, right? The tax cuts are going to be great for corporate earnings. They're going to be great for, driving, these companies to spend less on federal taxes and more on investing in their companies or paying their employees. So, but all those things could be inflationary. So there's a lot of puts and takes on both sides. So you can see why the Fed would be in a little bit of a hold, because this administration, with all the executive orders and the big moves they're trying to make, they're really trying to reshape government, and there's several puts and takes on both sides. I just think the net of it is you're going to have a lot less people working in the government. You're going to have a lot more people unemployed potentially, and with productivity improvements with AI, and the spending's going to come down. The tariffs, you know, there's a smart way to do tariffs. I'm glad that the president made the shift he did a week ago, which was like, hey, look, we're going to go reciprocal first week of April. So everybody has a little bit of time to get their ducks in a row. It's not a lot of time. But it's some time, but it's also some time for the other side to say, all right, maybe I should drop my tariffs. And so there's more time for resolution and there's less jerking of the markets. But I would be careful too. I do think a lot of companies are bringing inventory in, and I think that's going to mess with GDP. I think it's going to mess with potentially inflation. We'll see. And you're seeing some proactive price increases. Like, why is the new iPhone $599? Like, oh, what happened? It used to be a 499, 429, whatever product. What the hell happened?
Yeah.
Why the one that launched today? It's supposed to be the budget edition. Why the hell is it $600? What happened? So is Apple trying to get ahead of a tariff? Or is this embedded, ingrained inflation, which there is some of that? I mean, prices are generally higher, 20+% over the last 4 years. So I still think there's some structural things they got to work through, and there's puts and takes on both sides. But I think 2 years from now, we're going to be spending a lot less money. We're going to have a pretty vibrant economy. The question is it going to be too hot or not? But we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said it even better than I set it up. It's like, it's not just for these different things to land, but once they all land, then you have the downstream effects that that you can't absolutely know. And if you were only doing one thing, if you were only putting in tariffs, then you could say, okay, we
Yeah.
think based on these tariffs, we can kind of guess this is what's going to happen. But no, you've got the tariffs, the tax cuts, the oil drilling, drill baby drill. I mean, all of these different inputs, all having uh, impacts coming in all these different directions. So it would seem to me that this is a job for the Doge thinking. I mean, the not Doge, the new Grok, the thinking side of it. Couldn't we put all those inputs in, and shouldn't it be able to tell us what's going to happen?
I mean, maybe. I'll tell you this though. Yeah, like I said, I wrote an article. If your parts have more frequent flyer miles than your sales team, you're going to have a problem when tariffs hit.
Yeah.
And and so that's why EVs, even from Mexico, from Ford and GM, still cost a lot of money. And they're pretty inefficient in their supply chain. So yeah, if they get hit with tariffs, it's going to be, kind of multiplicative in nature. Whereas Tesla has more of the Tesla will get hit with parts. Tesla imports parts from Mexico.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear. But it's not the core of the vehicle. It's not the battery pack. It's not the motors. It's not the higher dollar items. It's all the higher dollar items are made next to the factory. So so yeah, I think tariffs is not a one size all thing. It's a bit different. Macroeconomics 101, tariffs in isolation are not inflationary
That's right.
because if you're not increasing the money supply, there's not more money to chase after the higher goods, and therefore the total prices can't go up. But I think if you have really good supply chains, I think you can overcome it, where the importer shares some, the exporter shares some, and there's some amount of burden sharing where the consumer doesn't take all of it. But if you have a bad supply chain, if you have engine blocks that are going over 5 times back and forth over the border, you have less room to play with in the pricing model. And the suppliers got to get their money, and then the 4 or 5 people in the chain got to get their money. And that's where it becomes. So yeah, if you start off with a bad supply chain, and again with higher frequent flyer miles on your parts than your salespeople, you will have a problem when tariffs hit.
Now,
It will be bad.
right now, lots of people have, yeah, including you, I've heard you say this several times now about back and forth across the border. But when you take a product that it gets started on one side, goes across, gets something added, comes back, gets something added, don't isn't there a takeaway I mean, isn't the tariff that comes back taking only into consideration the value added? It wouldn't be the entire product at that point.
A VAT, a value added tax would. A tariff, um, one of the, it will be mostly on the value add, but man, it becomes really difficult
Yeah,
uh, for to declare these things, and it's messy. But on a VAT, so this is the thing: the difference between a tariff and a VAT.
right.
On a in the in people are because people are giving me this argument. Oh, China even puts VAT on their domestic production. This isn't a big deal like what they're doing. No, what China does is if your supply base is local inside of your country, they will put a VAT on transaction or movement of product. But then what they'll do is they will subtract that VAT out if the device was finished and sold in the same country in China. They will net the VAT out of it. It'll come off the other side of it. So it's basically a way to force localized labor.
Mm,
You know, in the case of these parts going back and forth over the border, you are going to have um, that value add is going to get a 25 each time. And
the value.
so it is going to be additive. It's not going to be the one thing getting, you know, so anyway, it's messy.
Okay, all right, okay. I'm just curious about that because I've dealt with value added tax when traveling
Yeah.
and whatnot. You know, you leave London and you know you get your VAT back if you apply for it. So I knew that there was ways, and I've seen other situations where you have things removed because only this much of the product was made in
Yeah,
that.
Europe and China are big on VATs,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's one of the things that again, the tariff goblins on Axe who think everything we're doing is evil and have never traded with
yeah,
never set up manufacturing in Europe or China. They don't realize that there's a tariff and there's a VAT, and you have to address them both because you cannot be a net exporter. You can't be a great exporter to these countries. You know, when they have both of these punitive taxes on you, you've got to figure they got to. So do they have to have some amount of a protectionism? The question is how much.
right, right. Yeah, I think that's what it all comes down to. That's what I. In fact, I put a post out today on X. One of the things I'm most excited about the entire Trump administration is he's really pushing reset on so much. I mean, he's pushing reset on how world trade is conducted,
Yeah,
and and that is a very big deal. Now it's gonna probably there's gonna some things are gonna break.
yeah.
You do something this big, there are some things that are gonna break, and then you have to fix what breaks.
Well,
But
there's a convergence coming because for so many decades versus most of Asia and China, we were at a disadvantage. So let's
tremendous.
say we got reciprocal trade. Our stuff would still cost a whole lot more to build with 30, 40, $50 an hour labor, which is now going through the roof. By the way, UAW, this is one of the reasons you lost so much value add down to Mexico is you're applauding yourselves for getting raises for the people here. Meanwhile, these people are going to be getting laid off left and right, and they're not going to get new business because it's under $16 an hour. It's basically $4 to $16 an hour, depending on the area in Mexico to get anything built. So yeah. So the point is reciprocal trade conversation 20 years ago with World Trade Org so forth, it would have been a different conversation. Now with humanoids, now with automation, now with what Tesla is able to do with a vehicle, for example, I mean, Tesla can competitively export out of the United States.
Yeah.
And if you peel the VATs off, if you peel the tariffs off, and you give the U.S. a chance, we could be all of a sudden exporting vehicles. Why is China allowed to export all this stuff? Why is Vietnam allowed to export all this stuff? Why is it only them? And why do we have all? If you saw the VAT that we would have to send anything back to Vietnam versus what they have coming into us, it's ridiculous. So now is the time to have the reciprocal conversation because as we start getting higher productivity and more automated manufacturing, we can be more of an exporter.
Very, very cool. Well, as
Yeah.
always, Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. I know that you were had to rush to get to the show tonight, and I appreciate that you took the extra effort. And we'll
Yeah,
get another week to watch all of this unfolding, and it's so darned exciting. So until
very
next
good.
Wednesday, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to go ahead and get to the
Thanks, Randy.
numbers now. All right.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So what about those numbers? Well, Tesla had a very good day today. Tesla was up $6.45 on a day when the Dow was only up 71, NASDAQ was only up 14, S&P was only also up 14. And Tesla was ahead of the market all day from the very beginning. But it was up also double where it ended up. So for a while there, we were in the 366, 367 area and ended up at 360 and 56 at the end of the day. Also, since we're after 5 o'clock, I can look and tell you that we were up 6 cents in the after hours. All right, let's go ahead and look at what the rest of these numbers quickly. I have Brian Wang in about 5 minutes that I'm going to be doing a video that you'll want to watch at 7:45. So let's go ahead and finish up on these numbers so I can get to Brian. We have got the bonds ended up flat. Ended up at 4.525 for the day. That's pretty good. We're down just 1 basis point in the after hours. So overall for the day, that ended up quite good. But obviously we need to go a lot more. But it's better. It's at least directionally we're going in the right way. Oil is actually still over 72 for Texas Intermediate. But again, it seems to be coming off just a little bit off of those highs. Natural gas up in the after hours, now at 435, up 1.64%. Gold, another $20. Here we go. Getting closer and closer, back to 29.56. Silver up another 0.52% at 33.21. And copper at up 0.1% at 4.567. The Bitcoin up 2,763 on the day so far at 96,807. And the pre-market on the equities right now is pretty flat. 35 for the Dow, 0.08%, 7 for the S&P, that's 0.11%, and NASDAQ is 26.25 or 0.12. So all three kind of in that 0.1% range, not really directionally giving us much to think about in terms of tomorrow, but slightly off after having gains today. So that's what we're looking at. Again, Brian Wang will be with us at 7:45. You definitely want to tune into that one. I think we're going to be talking about Grok, but I think we're going to be, I'm not sure. We had like 5 subjects. This is one of those weeks where there's more subjects than you have time. And so, but I guarantee you, whatever it is, it's going to be phenomenal. So set your notifications for that. In order to hit notify, you need to hit the subscribe button. And then while you're just pushing buttons, you could hit the like button if you wanted to. All right, that's all I got for you right now. Let me get this up so I can get to Brian. It's been great, as always, talking to you.